Yesterday we began the class, and I'll just summarize what you have seen so far concerning the first chapter. Concerning the background for wisdom literature. First chapter is background on wisdom literature. And we said Hebrew Bible is divided into three parts, right? That is Tanakh, we call it. Torah consists of Torah, Nevi'im and Ketubim. So we said already Torah is 5 books, Pentateuch. Then Nevi'im consisting of historical books as well as prophetical books. Because starting from Moses, then Joshua, then Samuel, then Judges, all these were considered as prophets. Though there is a note of historical events recorded in Kings and the following, but they are considered under prophetical literature. Already I told you, in we study prophetical literature means we study from major prophets and minor prophets. But in Hebrew Bible it's not so. We said already that there are earlier prophets and later prophets. So Hebrew Bible is divided like that. Then added to that we have major prophets, minor prophets, and all together, taken together. Then we have third part, Ketubim, writings, and these are the three parts. And we said yesterday, God revealed to people of Israelites in these three modes. We said He reveals through Torah, that is instruction given by priests or law given by priests. God reveals through the spoken word of the prophet, that is word, Devar. And also God reveals through the wise counsel, the counsel of the wise, or those who have been educated, those who have been learned. Through their counsel, God reveals to His people Israelites. So these were the three modes of God's revelation in Israel. Then we said biblical meaning of the wisdom. We have the very word term wisdom in Hebrew is Hokmah. Hokmah. Yesterday I have written, I think, no? Yeah, Hokmah. Wisdom. Then wise, Hakam. Now, general sense, in the modern way of thinking, wisdom according to modern thinking, that the Western concept is the conceptual, that is theoretical. But whereas in the Bible, wisdom is practical and pragmatic, and who is called wise? Who has got the ability to order or put the things in order in his life despite the different challenges that he faces, and moves forward, and he is called wise. And for life, for each one of us, it's not that easy. Therefore, what we have to do? We have to bring order into our lives. Then how we can bring order into life? If you are wise, if you are able to, if you have got the capacity to manage, or to say more clearly, the capacity to live is called wise. The one who has got capacity to live is called wise. Therefore, all of us are wise. We are all living, right? Oh, good. So this is a first biblical meaning of the term wisdom, and there we have made 3 remarks, right? We made 3 remarks. Remark 1. So, what is life according to wisdom, or biblical wisdom? It is the ability to control the tasks of daily life. That's a wisdom. And we also said in this regard, if wisdom is considered as the ability to control one's life, each one can be wise. Given the situation, whatever situation one is, everyone can be wise. In that context only we said, farmers are wise, wailing women are wise, sailors are wise, merchants are wise, even the king is wise. We said, right? So they are all in their given profession, they are making their livelihood, survival. But however, third remark we made, there is the scribal schools, there is intellectual group of people, the learned group of people are there in Israel. They are also called wise. Now coming to how this wisdom movement began in the ancient Near East. Second point we have seen, wisdom movement. It began with writing and reading skills. In the third millennium, that is the first in the early known civilizations, that is in Mesopotamia, in Egypt, there began a reading, writing skills develop. With that began the wisdom movement. And from there we said, in Mesopotamia, the teaching, the learning, it is called house of tablet. The instruction was given there. And in Egypt we said, it is house of life we said. Yeah. Then coming to how this wisdom is spread, what were they teaching in the schools of wisdom, or in the schools, what the scribes was, their scribal movement was there. With that, there was teaching was going on. We said they were teaching fundamentals of life, fundamentals of skill and life, how to live. They were teaching fundamental ethics. They were teaching also, what is that? Administration skills for the high class, that is like a ruling class. For the young princes, group of princes, they were teaching administrative skills. Along with that, they were also collecting different wise sayings from across the world, from their early generations. They were collecting and compiling the books. Literature was made available. And from that context, we said one of the greatest epic of Sumerian epic, we called Gilgamesh. And these intellectuals, the wise people, they were not simply concerned about the ability to live and talking about this, how to manage a life and all that. Not only that, they were also speculating, thinking about different items like what is the meaning of life? Can man have eternal life? Can man overcome death? These are the things they were thinking about. So there was intellectual books were written, or epics, poems were written. So that from that context only, yesterday we were talking about Gilgamesh epic, right? Yeah. Now taking from this, Israel also falling back to the same tradition. In Egypt, this wisdom movement was very much spread. And we know already yesterday we said, these Israelites were sometime in Egypt. They knew very well about the wisdom movement there. And when they came back, they also began this reading and writing and all that. So from that context only we said some of the biblical texts become a replica of what Egyptian wisdom movement stood for. So which means some of the copies or remainings of wise sayings of Egyptian monks or say sages, that's been preserved in some of our biblical texts we said, right? Concerning the removing the landmarks at the property places. And also, what is that? This oppressing the poor. So, Egyptian text would say, if you oppress poor, God will oppress you. Likewise, biblical texts also take the same idea and speak about. So, which means there is a copy or there is an influence. Then we also said, what is the main concern of these sages of Egypt or ancient Near Eastern sages? What is their main concept? They said there is an old order. World is created with order, and what we are to do is we have to conform ourselves to that old order. If you do not conform yourself to the old order, you will be punished, or God will punish, or society, the rule, say in the place of God there is king and you will have punishment. So whenever and wherever these kind of aberrations or going away from the old order, people go away from the old order, there was punishment given, or say that kind of behavior was condemned by the wise sages. So we also said about this old order is represented by math, a wisdom lady who is controlling, governing and all these things. And this is the old idea or Egyptian thinking concerning the wisdom. Then we come back to how this kind of wisdom teaching was going on. We said there is at family level teaching was going on, family or clan level wisdom was taught. Also at the schools there was scribal schools where education was given, where this formal education of how to conduct oneself, everything is written. We also said from that context the earlier Egyptian texts that was speaking about how to conduct oneself at the table, especially the youngsters in the presence of king. And also there were regulations for the kings when the petitioner come, how they must be listening or giving a ear to the petitioner. So these are the ways. Now taking from that, we have in Israel also there is wisdom movement. Wisdom movement in Israel, there were two directions. Wisdom movement in Israel has taken two directions. First direction is pragmatic and optimistic. That is, you do good, you will be blessed. You do bad, you will be punished. So this is the conventional way of thinking. Conventional means ordinary way. Everywhere we see this kind of things or we hear this kind of things. What is that? The good will be prospering, the bad will be will be punished, like, right? We hear these kind of things. So this is conventional wisdom. Wisdom, this is one way, thinking one way. Then there is another direction of wisdom thinking. No, from our experience we see evil are thriving, bad are becoming prosperous, the just are undergoing a lot of struggles and all these things. So there is a speculative, there is a questioning attitude began in wisdom thinking. Do all those who do good will be blessed? This is a questioning. The two directions of wisdom thinking. One is the pragmatic and optimistic thinking that good will be prospering and bad will be punished. There is another way, another mode of thinking, that is speculative and questioning. No, not that. Our experience is not that even bad or good are experiencing bad things and bad are experiencing very good things. And for that, book of Habakkuk would give very practical reason. He would say, he is complaining that he sees everywhere bad are thriving. Then he would say, Lord, what is this? We heard something. The good will prosper and bad will be destroyed. That's what we hear. But what we see is bad are thriving and good are experiencing nice things in their lives. Then God says, soon things will be changed. Soon things will be changed. Not so with the wicked, not so. Bible says, not so with the wicked, not so. It would not continue like that for long. There is a day, evil will be confronted by God. All the evildoers will be confronted by God. So that's it. So these are the two conventional ways of thinking. And we also said there are two contexts in Israel wisdom movement. One is wisdom began with the teaching or learning at the early age or imparting professional skills from parents to the children. So from family, wisdom is taught. Likewise, in the clan, wisdom is taught. This is one way. Then second one is royal scribal schools. At the royal court, at the temple, there were schools. So they were being taught there. So this is what we said. Then finally we said, there was a shift. There was shift. What was the shift? A major shift happened in the post-exilic period, we said. You remember yesterday? The major shift in the post-exilic movement was, these were the secular texts, or say whatever we call it, wisdom literature. They appear secular text. They appear secular text first because you can pay attention. Can just grasp some 4 items, I would say. They appear secular text because all the wisdom literature, starting from Proverbs, ending with Song of Songs, whatever we call it, Song of Songs, all these books are speaking daily life experience. 1 minute, please. Daily life experience. So therefore, these wisdom books, they speak little about God. Most of the passages we don't hear about God. Then we also don't hear much about Israel's election. We don't hear about the covenant. We don't hear about the temple, Jerusalem temple. These are the main thrusts of Israel's belief. So these things are absent from the book of wisdom literature. And they always speak about speculative wisdom and all that. Why these kind of things were added in the book? So during the post-exilic time, what happened? All these books get a religious quote by interpreting from the angle of Torah. These books were rewritten and interpreted from the angle of Torah, from the fear of God. So we'll see in this second chapter that also touch a movement, or how the structure here we'll see. Under the structure, how book is structured, there we'll find how this major shift had happened. And coming finally, the last point, that is E, there we said, what are the forms of wisdom? What are the forms of wisdom? Wisdom literature is written in what forms? Usually any writing will have a form, right? Either prose or poetry or autobiography, or say these are the different styles, letter form. These are the ways, different ways we write. Now, to interpret a particular text, you should get into what literary style a particular text is written. Otherwise, you don't understand. A story is a story. You can't interpret it the other way. A narration is a narration. You should interpret a narration as a narration. That you should keep in mind. Likewise, wisdom literature fall under different categories. First, all the wisdom literature writings are in mishal form. First thing is what form? Mishal. Mishal is proverb. Mishal is a proverb form, first thing. Then they are also written in parable form. There are parables. Yesterday we have read. There are popular folk proverbs. Then there were allegories. Then riddle forms. Riddle form, fable form. Then autobiographical form. All these things. Then onomasticon. Finally, onomasticon forms. So this is the first chapter. Wisdom literature. First chapter, introduction. We come to know that wisdom books are these, and wisdom means this. So in Israel, the wisdom movement is being influenced by the ancient Near Eastern way of thinking. Ancient Near East, there were schools. With the schools, wisdom way of thinking, wisdom movement began. Israel also has incorporated into that movement and has written. And we have seen, when did this wisdom movement begin? With the monarchy, we said, right? Yesterday we were saying the monarchy, wisdom movement began, and with Saul, with the David and Saul, this wisdom movement flourished, because along with the king there were wise council members were there, and they were giving suggestions to the king, and all these things. So this is the first lesson concerning the introduction part. Now we are coming to second lesson. Yesterday we have already given introduction. Introduction to the second lesson we have already spoken. And second lesson, ways of wisdom in Proverbs. Very important text we are beginning with. There we will speak introduction. Yesterday already we have said. Introduction, proverb. What is the meaning of proverb? Already we said mishal. Mishal means what? The meaning of the mishal is to rule or comparison, both. Rule means to bring order in your life. Through wisdom you bring order in your life. Through wisdom you control, you rule, you manage, you govern your life. So this is the meaning of the word proverb. Then coming to the structure, we said book is structured into 10 sections and 5 booklets. 7 booklets. 10 sections and 7 booklets. And we will see that, and with that we shall start. Yeah, we shall see from the beginning, from the introduction part. Title. What is the title of the book? Please open your Bibles and see what is the title of the book. Title of the book is Proverbs, right? Is it? Title of the book is Proverbs. Now the root word already we have said it is mishal, therefore the then concerning this book title is provided with that, we have no problem with that. Then concerning the author, who is the author? Who is the author of the book? Yeah, the text appears, the text would say the Solomon, the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. So this is the title, this is the author already. Book is speaking about the author. Who is the author? But we know from all that we have already seen yesterday about the different sections or 10 sections that we have seen. At least 2 sections they are naming after Solomon, but other things are not from Solomon. Already we said this wisdom literature, some of the things are being taken from, borrowed from other cultures. Therefore we can't call it is Solomon. So what we can say at the most is it's a compilation of Solomon's sayings and other sayings. You understand? So now who can be the author? Author cannot be Solomon alone. Can we call, because some of the sayings of the Solomon are put together, can we call this is Solomon's book? No. The historical or the study would prove that these texts were compiled during the post-exilic time. Okay, date and author go together. So when this book is compiled, they say 3rd century BC. That is, yesterday I was trying to say, Israel's history, you always keep in mind, 722, it is Assyrian, fall of Israel. Fall of Israel. 587 or 6 is the fall of Judah. So this is deportation to Assyria, this is deportation to Babylon. Okay? Now, after that, 359 something like that, here we will have, this is a Persian period, Persia overthrows Babylon and takes control, and only during this time, people or Israelites were given freedom to go back to their native countries to build their temples and re-establish themselves. They only need to pay homage or be under the control of Persia, but otherwise they can build up their nation, they can build up their worship, religious freedom is given to them. So during the Persian period, on their return, We said during the time of monarchy, that is before, or taken together all this time during monarchy, there were kings, there were in the king's court wise people, or they called counselors. The scribal schools, these people were supporting them, and during the time of deportation, either Assyria or Babylon, the wise people were taken. So Daniel is one of the wise young men. They have been carried to deportation to Babylon. From Babylon he is been taken to Assyria, so Persia. During the Persian period, Daniel we see. Now if you see, from that background, what we are trying to say is, now those wise people who are in Babylonian exile were thinking. They were exposed to world wisdom of the world. They were exposed to Assyrian wisdom. They were exposed to Babylonian wisdom. They were exposed to Persian wisdom. On their return, they were taking their Torah and they were interpreting the world wisdom. They were compiling the books. So this is how wisdom literature has come into. Previously there was only Torah and prophetical books. Later, during the post-exilic time, all their wise sayings, wisdom things, they were compiled together. Even the wise sayings of their own kings, say who is that? Solomon. So all these things put together, and there came wisdom literature. It has become part of wisdom literature. That you keep in mind. That should be in your background. Now the date for these books, when they were compiled, we are trying to say during the post-exilic time, could be 3rd century BC. So most of the wisdom literature books were compiled. So one among the wisdom literature books is Proverbs. Therefore, that also is being composed during the time of Persian period, or on their return, Persian period or Hellenistic period. Once the Persians are over, then again there were Hellenists, Greeks. Greeks were occupying this Palestine. First by Assyrians, then by Babylonians, then by Persians, then by Hellenists, Greeks, then by Romans. So these are the successive kingdoms that occupy Palestine. So this you keep in mind. This history, if it is there in your mind, it will be clear. So probably the date for the book of Proverbs could be post-exilic time. On their return, they were compiling the books, from interpreting all the books from Torah. Keep this thing. This is the main thing. They cannot forget. These things. Under the light of this Torah, they are interpreting or compiling the books. That we shall see little later. Then concerning the context. What is the context of? In which context the book of Proverbs or other wisdom literature in Israel were written? There could be 4 contexts. Every text, every incident to happen, there will be a context. Keep in mind. Every incident to happen, there will be a context. Now, wisdom literature had happened. Now, what was the context? How they have come in? They have 4 seeds in Laban. Yesterday we were talking about 4 seeds in Laban. What are those 4 seeds in Laban? First of all, it is royal court. From the royal court, there were wise people, we say. There were advisors to the king, and there were some books, some things were compiled. And later, there have been scribal schools. Again, scribal schools also contributed to these wise sayings. Later, we have said, there is a family setup. Some things were added from the family wisdom. There is a family wisdom. There is wisdom from the royal court. There are wisdom proverbs or wisdom literature, wisdom sayings from the, what is that? Scribal schools. Finally, there is intellectual movement. There is individual intellectuals. They were writing, from them they have been compiled. So these are the 4 Sitzen-Leben, 4 contexts out of which these biblical wisdom literature have emerged. This you keep in mind. Then the place of wisdom literature, especially of Proverbs. Even what you are talking about? Proverbs. Now where they were spoken, where they were collected, okay, where they were spoken, we always said either priest or prophet or wise sage. These 3, they spoke to the people in the context of temple. Temple was a place where people were instructed or trained. So likewise, these wisdom literatures, where they were developed in the temple, the areas of temple. We said yesterday, in the temple, along with the place of worship, there were quarters for kings, kingly family. There were quarters for prophets. There were quarters for priests. Or there were quarters for sages. Different quarters were there. So every time a prophet would speak to people, he wouldn't go and speak when they are working there. Very seldom. Even Prophet Amos, where did he go? Few weeks ago we have studied. He had gone to Bethel. Bethel is a temple. You understand? Bethel is a temple place. And to the temple people come for worship. And it is there prophets who spoke God's word to the people. And it is there priests who are speaking to the people. And it is there sages who are instructing. That you keep in mind. And again we are speaking about the structure of the book. About the structure of the book. Is it time? No, you should say. Here we will close for this section. We will go for a break.